welcome to another video. My name is CJ, the Populist New Yorker, and today we're going to be taking a second look at the early vote via the website Target Smart, which basically tracks the early vote nationwide and broken down by states, and basically gives us rough estimates of Republican, Democratic, and Independent turnout in these early vote totals. So about a week ago, I made a map in one of my videos, basically of where the early vote was at, and I didn't include states that were already safe red or safe blue, because either way on election day, those states are going to be, safe red or safe blue. So I figured it wouldn't make sense. So I've only really focused on competitive states in that video, and in this video, we're going to do the exact same thing. Only going to focus on competitive states and districts. So we're going to first just take a quick look at the national popular vote, which does not even really count for the election, but it is a good indicator to see where the country is as a whole. So in 2016, 26 million Americans voted earlier by mail. 48.5% of those voted for Democrats, 42.9% for Republicans, with 8% independent. This time, 55 million Americans have already voted early. 49.4% for Democrats, 40% for Republicans. So already Democrats have made slight gains over 2016 in totality in the early vote. Now we're going to be looking at the early vote by state, going west to east, and we'll start off with the state of Nevada. So if we go to the state of Nevada, we could take a look at the early vote shares there and get an idea of where Nevada is headed to Election Day. So in 2016, Democrats led the early vote, 51.7% to 40% for Republicans. This time around, Democrats only lead Republicans 47.2% to 44.5%. Now that could be attributed to more Republicans and Democrats as a whole early voting, because I think most voters in the 2020 election are probably going to vote early, given the circumstances. And if we look, already 62% of Nevada voters have cast their ballots that were counted in the 2016 election. So already we have 62% of the vote in from 2016, probably somewhere around half or a little more than half of the 2020 vote. So right now, Democrats have a slight lead, so we're going to give that lean Democrat right now. Now again, this is not a prediction video, this is just showing where the results are at. So this is where we were last week, this is where we are now. Next, we're going to look at the state of Arizona. Alright, so in the state of Arizona, this is a state that actually is very used to voting early and voting by mail. They did a lot of it in 2016 and in 2018. In 2016, Republicans led the early vote by around 6 points. This time, Democrats lead the early vote by around 5 points. So that is quite a shift, a little under 5 points. But that is actually quite a significant shift in favor of Democrats. This does not mean that Democrats are going to win the state of Arizona. More people are voting early as a whole, but it just shows that right now Joe Biden is in a better position than Hillary Clinton was at this point in the race in the state of Arizona. Next, we're going to look at the state of Colorado. This isn't the state that isn't that competitive, but it is still quote-unquote competitive, so I will show it. In 2016, Democrats led the early vote 51 to 40. This time it's around 50 to 40, so basically just it's nearly identical. In fact, Democrats are doing slightly better in 2020 than they were in 2016, but only very slightly. So we're going to put Colorado as likely for the early vote as of right now. Again, we still have a week of early voting left. In some states, it's around 5 days. So this could very well change. But right now, we have a week until Election Day, and this is where the early votes are at. So this is actually better news for Trump than what we had last week. So, it's not all doom and gloom for the Trump campaign. Trump can definitely still win this election. I'll go on record saying that there's a very good chance he can. I don't have him as the favorite, but just given these numbers, and as we're going to look, in some of these states later on, Republicans are actually overperforming where they were in 2016. So that could be very significant ahead of the election. Next, we're going to look at the state of New Mexico. So last time in 2016, Democrats led 58 to 36. This time, Democrats only lead 54 to 39. So we've had a shift to the right, a slight shift to the right, but still New Mexico going safe for the Democrats in the early vote. Keep in mind that last time around, only 286,000 people voted early in New Mexico. That has nearly doubled to 500,000. And 69.9, so effectively 70% of the votes cast in 2016 were already cast in New Mexico a week before Election Day. So that's already very significant. This means that a lot of people, more than half of the people that voted in 2016 have already voted, and we still have a week. So Democrats still losing some ground, but still doing relatively strong in the state of New Mexico. We're going to look at Nebraska's 2nd district now. This was a district that last time we had as safe for the Democrats in terms of the early vote. And as we're going to see right now, the early vote has definitely shifted. Wow, shifted a lot. So last time around in 2016, I'm silly. That is the statewide vote for Nebraska. My bad. That is not the congressional district. When we go to Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, there we go. That seems more like it. So Democrats actually led by 10 points in the 2nd congressional district, which Donald Trump won by around 2 points in 2016. This time, Democrats only lead by around 3. So we went from 10 points down to 3 points. That could be a very good sign for Trump and the Republicans going into the election. So only 42% of Nebraska's 2nd voters have counted, had their ballots counted since 2016, so lower than New Mexico, for instance, but still very significant. So right now, Nebraska's 2nd is lean for Joe Biden in the early vote. Now we're going to go to the state of Texas. And this is interesting because as of right now, Republicans are doing better than they were in 2016. That's right, not Democrats, but actually Republicans are doing better, which shocked me quite a bit. So in 2016, Democrats lost the early vote by around 9 points. This time, Democrats are losing the early vote by around 12 points. So as of right now, we have the Republicans up by around 12 points in Texas, which would actually put Texas in the safe category by my calculations. Now, again, that is likely to change. But right now, Texas is 12 points in favor of the Republicans. So that is a big shift from last week. This is last week's result. This is this week's result. So things are getting a lot redder. That doesn't mean things won't shift back. They could very well snap back. There's still a week of early voting and in person. But right now, this is what we're looking at. If we go to the state of Minnesota now, Republicans doing slightly better. So last time, 51% of the early vote went to Democrats, 34% went to Republicans, and of course the rest was unaffiliated, so we don't really know where those broke, but I would guess some of those broke Republican more so than others, since the state of Minnesota was only a 1.5 difference last time. This time in 2020, Democrats have 47% of the vote, 30% going to Republicans. That's a 17-point lead. That's still a relatively comfortable lead in the early vote for the Democrats. But again, this could all change. I mean, it was even more comfortable last time, and of course, Hillary Clinton barely won the state of Minnesota. So could that mean the state of Minnesota is shifting toward Trump in the, the rest of the week? Well, I guess we'll find out on Election Day. But right now, the state of Minnesota leading to Joe Biden. Why can't I get that? All right, now we're going to... Oh, wait, I meant safe. What am I saying? Next, we're going to look at the state of Iowa. Now, Iowa is just a really weird state overall. Because Democrats last time led in the early vote pretty overwhelmingly by 14 points, yet they actually lost the state by almost 10. So this time around, Democrats are only leading the vote by 8 percentage points. So Democrats only leading the early vote by 8 percentage points. 45% of the 2016 turnout has already been reported. So as of right now, Iowa is only lean Democratic, as opposed to being likely back in 2016 and safe just about a week ago. So that is, again, this is pretty decent news for Republicans right now. But again, in-person voting, it really all depends who's voting and at what time. And again, these results aren't concrete because, of course, you have the unaffiliated and you have the votes coming in the future. Next, we'll look at the state of Wisconsin. Down here. So back in 2016, Democrats led the early vote by around 13 percentage points. This time, Democrats are leading the early vote by around 4 percentage points. So that is a pretty rightward shift, but I guess keep in mind, early vote turnout is much higher than it was last time. 43% of the ballots counted in 2016 have been counted in the 2020 election. So already 43% of people that voted in 2016. The turnout is 43% right now. So less than half, but still I think that's pretty significant. So as of right now, we have Democrats and Joe Biden just leading by a lean margin in Wisconsin. Of course, these independents, 22%, that could really go either way. That could go very heavily to Biden, and it could go more so in the direction of Trump. But right now, we have Wisconsin as a lean. Next, we're going to look at the state of Michigan. And this is pretty surprising. But the state of Michigan is not as lopsided as you'd think. Actually, in 2016, Democrats were leading by 38% to Republicans 36%. This time, Democrats are leading 42.9%, so 43%, to 38%. So Democrats have improved just a tad bit in the state of Michigan, putting it in the lean category for the early vote. But again, Republicans could still make up that ground, and Democrats could solidify their lead even more so. Next, we'll look at the state of Ohio. So last time, Democrats led the early vote in Ohio by 7 points. This time, Republicans are leading the early vote by 4 points. So last time we had Democrats lead the early vote. This time we have Republicans leading. 40% of the votes cast in 2016. We're at 40% turnout based from 2016. So still less than half of the 2016 total even counted yet. So this isn't, again, take these all kind of with a grain of salt, but this is where we're at right now. Republicans leading in the early vote in Ohio as of today. So that is not a shift. They're actually leading by slightly more than they were last week. So this is last week's map for the early voting. This is this week's map. So obviously more Republicans have turned out since early voting has started to vote for Donald Trump. Most likely because that's their party affiliation. Next, we're going to move north and then head south down the eastern seaboard. So we'll start with the state of Maine. I already did this before. Maine is still safe for Joe Biden overall, but we'll look at Maine's 2nd congressional district because that is the only really swing district in the state of Maine. Just like in the state of Nebraska, the only swing district is also the 2nd, funny enough. So in 2016, Democrats had 55.9% of the early vote in the 2nd district to Republicans 34.7%. This time, Democrats are leading 51.4 to 36. So Republicans have gained, Democrats have lost a tiny bit. Keep in mind, this is a congressional district. Trump won by 10 points last time. So I think it's very hard for this congressional district to flip. So as of right now, technically the district is still registering as safe Democrat, but also keep in mind this is a district that went to Donald Trump by 10. Next, we're going to look at the state of New Hampshire. So we don't have anything to really base this data off of. So right now, Democrats are leading the early vote by around 20 points. We don't have 2018 or 2016 numbers for early voting. I guess maybe New Hampshire didn't have it, or it's just not in the website. So as of right now, it's just safe. We don't really have a lot of concrete data in the state of New Hampshire. Moving on to the state of Pennsylvania. Now, this is really interesting. So in 2016, 51.2% of the early vote went to Republicans, 44.3% went to Democrats. This time around, Democrats are leading the early vote 65 to 27, so a massive swing to the left. But, and this is important, only 23% of the vote is in from the 2016 total. So effectively, maybe around 19% of the 2020 election results from PA are actually in. So this is really not that significant as of right now. So right now we're going to have Pennsylvania as safe. Again, this is really not significant since such a low number of the vote has been counted already in the state of Pennsylvania. Next, we're going to move down to the state of Virginia. In 2016, Democrats led the early vote 50 to 37. This time, they're only leading 39 to 37. So basically about the same. So It's effectively 12-point lead, just like last time. So Virginia still being just on the cusp of being safe. It basically is a safe state now, but that's where it is right now. So Democrats leading the early vote by around 12. And if that number holds, we can expect a similar margin for the Democrats in the general election, if not even slightly more so. But again, keep in mind, less than half of the 2016 total is in. So I think the more of the vote that is in, the higher the turnout, the more accurate the results. Right now, most of New Mexico's votes from 2016 and probably over half of the votes for the 2020 election have already been cast, and they're so far Biden is leading by a safe margin, which is very good news for him. But I mean, it would be very, very bad news if he didn't win the state of New Mexico, because this is a state that is blue. This is a state Democrats are supposed to win. Next, we're going to move on to the state of North Carolina, if we can find it. I don't know, I have trouble finding these sometimes. There we go. Alright, so this is also pretty significant. In 2016, Democrats led the early vote by 13 points, 54 to 41. This time, they're only leading the early vote by 5. So effectively, that puts North Carolina in the lean category. Last week, it was in the safe category. So we've had a lot of changes. The map has gotten redder since last week. Last week was when we just started early voting in most places. But now it's really starting to ramp up, and we're in the final stretch here. So keep in mind, we can't tabulate in-person voting until Election Day. So we're not actually going to know. These are not concrete results by any stretch of the imagination, and these all are subject to change. But this is just where we are, October 27th, 2020. Now we're finally going to move on to the state of Georgia. So in 2016, Republicans led the early vote 52.9 to 42.1. Now Republicans are only leading the early vote 49.2 to 44. So a 5-point shift to the left. However, Republicans are still leading the early vote by a lean margin. Nope, Republicans. By a lean margin. Again, if we go back to 2016, they were in the likely category in early voting, which means in-person voting actually favored Democrats in 2016. So this could be a warning sign for Republicans in Georgia if these numbers don't improve for them, and actually good news for Democrats. I think flipping the state of Georgia is still fairly unlikely. However, this is, the numbers don't lie. This is pretty significant. 64% of the votes counted in the 2016 election were already counted in Georgia, so I think that's pretty significant. However, we have way more people early voting than last time, so it could just be, it might just be a lot different than it was in 2016. However, Republicans still leading. They weren't leading last time. Democrats were leading last time, so I guess better news for them. And finally, we're going to move down to the state of Florida. So this is the last state we're going to be looking at in the early vote. I'll be making another video like this in around 5 days, right before Election Day, to really see where the early vote is at before in-person voting starts. So in 2016, Democrats led the early vote 47 to 45. Now Democrats are leading 48 to 45. So Democrats are leading slightly more in the early vote, with 59% of the total votes counted statewide in the 2016 election already counted in 2020. So over half the votes for 2020 have already been counted in the state of Florida. So this puts Florida in the lean Biden category, whereas last time it was safe Biden. So again, this is last week's map. 357 for Biden, Trump 181. Now we're at 341, 197. And I think a lot of the states where Biden is leading now, like North Carolina, Florida, Iowa, those are probably going to fluctuate quite a bit. And maybe even some of these Rust Belt states, who knows. But anyway, that's all for today's video. This is where the early vote stands as of October 27th. Please leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a single video that I post. And stay tuned, because we're going to have more predictions and updates and news coming up in the future. We only have a week until Election Day. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.